Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
This is the Bloomberg Daybreak Europe podcast, available every morning on Apple, Spotify or wherever you listen. It's Tuesday, the 10th of September in London. I'm Caroline Hepker.
And I'm Stephen Carroll. Coming up today, Apple unveils its latest iPhone, but artificial intelligence features are still on the horizon.
Bloomberg learns that new capital requirements for big US banks could be slashed in half.
Plus, going head-to-head for the first and possibly only time, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris gear up for tonight's presidential debate.
Let's start with a roundup of our top stories.
Apple has introduced the latest version of its flagship device, the iPhone 16. And despite modest hardware upgrades, CEO Tim Cook insists the new phone was built from the ground up with AI in mind.
Its power and capability enable us to get so much done, like connecting with our family and friends, staying productive on the go, and capturing life's special moments. Apple Intelligence will supercharge these experiences and so many more. It puts powerful generative models right at the core of your iPhone.
Tim Cook speaking there as the firm pitches to consumers and Wall Street that it should be taken seriously in the world of generative AI. However, the firm's technology is still in its early stages and its Apple Intelligence tools have faced numerous delays, with many key features not arriving until next year. Alongside its smartphone launch, the tech titan also unveiled updates to its smartwatch and AirPods.
Bloomberg understands that US regulators have more than halved a proposed increase in capital requirements for the biggest banks on Wall Street. Under new plans, global systemically important banks would face a 9% increase in capital requirements, down from the previously floated 19%. The sharp reduction will be seen as a win for the likes of Bank of America and JP Morgan, and comes after a fierce lobbying campaign by those in the industry. The full plan will be outlined later today, with the Fed Chair Jerome Powell suggesting final adoption may not take place until well into next year.
Goldman Sachs trading unit is on track to drop 10% from last year. That's higher than the 6.6% reduction that analysts had estimated. According to CEO David Solomon, the fall will be led by declines in the fixed income business.
First, with respect to trading, I would say that with FICC and equities, we had an extremely strong third quarter in 2023. And given this quarter, given what I'd say is a more challenging macro environment, particularly, in the month of August, that business is trending down close to 10%, largely due to FICC.
Goldman Sachs' David Solomon went on to say the firm will take a $400 million pre-tax hit to its narrowing consumer business. Goldman stock is up 27% this year, recording bigger gains than most of its rival.
HSBC may merge its commercial and investment bank teams. Sources tell Bloomberg Europe's largest lender is weighing the move as a part of a push to cut down on jobs and costs. Bloomberg Intelligence's Matt Ingram says the proposal would have a major impact.
I guess they're looking around at low-hanging fruit, and it might seem, there's a lot of relationship bankers in commercial and in global banking and markets. Maybe we can cut some of those high-cost relationship bankers. I think they're going to go full circle on this again, and they're going to realise there's a revenue impact to doing this. This isn't just about cutting costs, and so they have to be extremely careful.
Ingram adds that as yet there isn't an official plan. If the HSBC restructuring were to happen, the combined division would become the bank's largest revenue generator, contributing about $40 billion a year.
China's exports jumped to a two-year high in August in a rare boost to the economy. The country sold $309 billion worth of goods, nearly 9% more than the year before, and beating estimates by a wide margin. Although a bright spot for the country's second largest economy, cheap goods flooding external markets have sparked a backlash in the US, Europe and South America.
Here in the UK, Chancellor Rachel Reeves has appealed to Labour MPs to back the government in a tense vote on cuts to a subsidy for pensioners to heat their homes during the winter. Sources tell Bloomberg the government expects dozens of Labour lawmakers to express opposition to the policy. Bloomberg's James Walcock has more.
There is unease within the Labour Party at the idea of penalising the elderly. MP Rachel Maskell says she can't support the cuts and knows colleagues who won't either. The Chancellor Rachel Reeves rallied backbenchers in a private meeting last night. We're told she warned them that there are more difficult decisions to come and that this is a reflection of their economic inheritance. The Resolution Foundation had been looking into what those decisions might be. The think tank says Reeves could raise £20 billion by hiking inheritance and capital gains taxes without breaking any election pledges. In London, James Woolcock, Bloomberg Radio.
The actor James Earl Jones, famous for his work on the Star Wars franchise, has died aged 93.
Obi-Wan never told you what happened to your father.
He told me enough. He told me you killed him.
No, I am your father.
James Earl Jones there in his role as Darth Vader. The award-winning performer passed away at his home in New York, according to his representatives, Independent Artist Group. He also won critical acclaim for his work in Fences and The Great White Hope during a near 60-year career. In a moment, we'll bring you more on that Apple product launch and look ahead to tonight's US presidential debate between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. But another story that we've been reading this morning about a new investor in French vineyards, and not just any investor and not just any vineyards, we should point out. This is the billionaire chairman and co-founder of Alibaba, Joe Tsai, who's part of a consortium that's bought some land in Burgundy's wine country. Now, Bloomberg's Tara Patel has discovered the parcels of land that he's invested in don't produce their own wine. They're part of what's known as the Champs-Élysées of Burgundy, though, in the Côte de Nuit area. So they have the highest classification of appellation. Bottles from the region can retail for hundreds of euros. It's a bit of a billionaire's corner in this part of Burgundy as well. So his neighbours will include Francois Pinault of Kering, also has a vineyard in the area as well, as does LVMH too. So it's a bit of a billionaire's corner.
Okay, is this about about the wine tasting? Is it about a beautiful place to spend time? Have you been there?
I haven't, but I have many friends who live in the area.
And you're a bit of a wine connoisseur, I will reveal. Perhaps not at 6 a.m, but
thanks, Caroline. I'll close that bottle, shall I?
Yeah, absolutely. Right, let's think about other things then, shall we? That story about vineyards on the Bloomberg terminal, of course, this morning. In terms of the product launches, though, let's get more on the new products unveiled by Apple. Notably, the iPhone 16 CEO Tim Cook says that the new model was built for AI, but the features aren't ready to be rolled out yet. Our chief technology correspondent, Mark Gurman, joins us now for more. Mark, good morning.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, that's right. The new iPhones were introduced earlier. This is now, unbelievably, the iPhone 16. It only feels like a few years ago almost when the original iPhone launched, but we've come a long way.
How much does this feel like just another iteration of the iPhone, though? Or how much is there something to be really excited about for consumers or indeed for investors from this new piece of technology?
Yeah, I mean, I think the great news is that consumers are still, all these generations in, extremely excited about this technology. I think Apple has shored up its ecosystem and its garden into a way where they have these events every September where they introduce a new iPhone, new version of the AirPods, new version of the Apple Watch, because their ideal consumer owns all three product lines, and there are many people who are excited about owning all three product lines and upgrading. Me personally, I'm looking forward to upgrading from a 15 Pro Max to a 16 Pro Max. I think that the new black color for the Apple Watch Ultra 2 is very cool. I like the look of it, the satin black finish. For me personally, the new AirPods 4, I have an AirPods Pro 2nd Gen. So for me, the AirPods 4 would be a downgrade. But for people who are on older AirPods models, the AirPods 4 so far looks like a nice upgrade. But across the board, everything is very iterative. But that's okay. Apple's not going after the people who upgrade every year necessarily. Maybe they once were, or for sure they once were. Now they're going after the pent-up demand, the people who haven't upgraded in a few years, the people who are on Android or another ecosystem. They want to pull them into the Apple ecosystem. So they make that Apple offering better every year to try to gain more share.
Okay, so that's interesting, the rundown of what you like in terms of the tech. But what does it mean for AI? I mean, the delays and the lag behind competitors in terms of generative AI, how does that work if you compare, that consumer, the upgrade cycle?
Yeah, this may be a controversial take, but I think that the vast majority of consumers don't really care about AI. They won't know what Apple Intelligence is. It doesn't mean actually pretty much anything to them. It's going to be a US English and an America thing from the get-go. It's not going to come for UK English until the tail end of this year. It's not going to expand to other regions outside the United States until next year. There's no timeline on when it's going to be supported in China or the European Union. So I think it's something that's very nascent, and I don't think it's something that's going to sell many new iPhones this year. I think potentially next year or the year after. But consumers, they care about new features. They care about new colors. They care about the new camera control button, right? They care about the new black or gold or white color options on the iPhone 16 Pro. They care about the really cool new colors on the iPhone 16 and the 16 Plus. So there's a few things to like there if you're looking to upgrade from a much older iPhone model, but I don't think the AI story for Apple has been told yet. I think it's still very early there. For other companies, the AI story has been written and even turned into a movie by now.
Okay, so there's definitely something to keep an eye on there in terms of future developments. But this is, in terms of revenues for Apple, they need to get the iPhone right. They need to attract the consumers in the way that you've been describing. Is this, in your view, enough for them to be able to score a win on these new products?
So even if there's a time where Apple is slow in one particular year to add new users, right? Even if they don't come out with a phone compelling enough to bring in a ton of new people, they're not going to lose people, right? Very few people leave the Apple ecosystem. Once you're in there, you're kind of stuck. You fall in love with it. You like how integrated it is. You like iMessage. You like your apps. You like all the money you've spent on subscriptions. So the point being, it doesn't really matter. I was watching here in the U.S., we have the Jimmy Kimmel show, right? He's one of our talk show hosts. I don't know the equivalent, unfortunately, in the U.K., but they have this skit where they bring an iPhone around to people on Hollywood Boulevard. It's one of the famous streets here in California, and they'll hand them an iPhone that is the current phone or a little bit older phone, a couple generations old. They'll hand it to random people walking on the streets, and they'll tell them, this is the brand new iPhone. What do you think? And it literally could be the iPhone that they already have in their pocket, and they still think it's the most amazing thing ever, and they still think it's the new iPhone, right? The Apple brand and the marketing engine behind them is so strong that even in a year where they're not really doing a lot, right, where they're maybe promising things that aren't actually here yet, and like in the case of Apple Intelligence, they're still going to do quite well.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? The gap between the insiders, the tech, the people at the front of technology, and then the average consumer. Mark, thank you so much for illustrating that. Our Chief Technology Correspondent, Mark Gurman.
Now, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump will face off in their first head-to-head TV debate tonight. The ABC News presidential debate being held in Philadelphia at a time when the margin between the two candidates in the polls is razor thin. Our EMEA News Director Rosalind Matheson is here with us for more. Morning to you, Ros. Donald Trump's repeatedly attacked Kamala Harris for not doing interviews or facing enough scrutiny. What does she need to achieve in this debate?
Well, it's interesting because there's always a debate really about how important debates are. We've seen candidates ostensibly win the debate but not win the election, although recently, of course, we saw the Joe Biden debate with Donald Trump, which was very consequential for him then deciding to step down. So there's quite a bit at stake for her, and that's because, as you say, the polls are really, really close within the margin of error, and the voters that matter there are in about 6 states, the swing states, and the voters in those swing states really care about the economy. And so for Kamala Harris, it's an opportunity to really set out her stall on her policies around the economy, because she is obviously someone who doesn't have a track record on economic policy, and she's starting to put the bones around that now. But it's the chance for her to speak directly to those voters and to say, if I were president, these are things I'm going to do to support economic growth.
Yeah, although the Trump team would say, actually, surely she does have a track record because of being the vice president. What do you think a win for Trump would look like?
Well, it's interesting because he's been trying all sorts of attack lines. He does like an attack line, a personal one against people, and he's been sort of deploying a few against her. It's a bit unclear if those are landing, so he might be trying out new attack lines on her. It was interesting, given the way the debate is set up, there won't be a lot of kind of one-on-one conversation. They can't rebut each other in the minute, and so does he use this to try and come across as somewhat restrained, even a bit presidential, shall we say. But for him, in a way, it's also, showing that he's nimble on his feet, that he's mentally still very fit, because oddly enough, the questions around age now are about him. He is the elder candidate in all of this, and he wasn't that much younger than Joe Biden, with all the questions around Joe Biden's age. And so interestingly, it'll be about him having to prove in a way that he can handle himself in that situation.
From a policy point of view, Roz, is this the forum where we're going to learn more about the key points of difference on economics or foreign policy?
Well, certainly we've seen them tout some of their economic policies in recent weeks. I mean, Donald Trump just says he'll cut taxes on everything for everybody. They've both been competing over some of the territory on the economy, saying that they would, get rid of taxes on tips. For example, Kamala Harris is pointing herself a bit more towards those who are perhaps struggling with the cost of living issues in the US. So benefits for first home buyers, benefits for those who are struggling to pay for groceries, tax breaks for startups, for small businesses, for example. So a bit more specific from her. It'll be interesting to see how they try and differentiate themselves on that. And then obviously on foreign policy, the key question will be which one of them will be harder on China. Obviously, Donald Trump is very much out in front on that one.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, your morning brief on the stories making news from London to Wall Street and beyond.
Look for us on your podcast feed every morning on Apple, Spotify and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
You can also listen live each morning on London DAB Radio, the Bloomberg Business app and Bloomberg.com.
Our flagship New York station is also available on your Amazon Alexa devices. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130. I'm Caroline Hepker.
And I'm Stephen Carroll. Join us again tomorrow morning for all the news you need to start your day, right here on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.